ho, ho, ho.
Hey guys, I'm Kimberly from Fat Quarter Shop. Thanks for joining me for part 4 of our 2021 Christmas in July called All the Trimmings. This week we're working on the Christmas tree row. You'll want to subscribe to our channel to find all of these free patterns. Your free pattern is in the description box below, and you can pick up your quilt kit at Fat Quarter Shop. To add to the fun, we've added a cross stitch this year, and this is the first 4 parts. So go to Fat Quarter Shop Floss Tube on YouTube, subscribe to that channel, and you can not only quilt along with us, you can also stitch along with us. So let's get started on part 4. We're going to start by cutting our background, and if you watched our previous videos, you will see that we have been cutting off of this piece the entire time. I just ironed this part and rolled this part up. We'll use this in part 5. And what I've got is I put the fold at the top and the salvage at the bottom. Now this one, we are gonna cut more strips than we did on the others. And what I do anytime I'm quilting is I look at my pattern and decide what I need to cut before I cut. So what I've come up with for part 4, we're gonna cut one 3.5 inch strip. Now this is a straightening cut just to get it nice and straight. So my next cut will be straight. So I'm gonna do the 3.5, and when you're working with black, it's a little bit harder to see the lines on the ruler, so just be careful. So this is a 3.5 cut. I'm just gonna move it aside. I'm gonna do two 2.5 inch cuts. So instead of doing that, I'm gonna cut once at the 5 inch, and once at the 2.5 inch. And I'm using the creative grids because there are little grip dots right here. If you put your hand flat and you move it, you can see your ruler does not move. So I'll move these aside. These are my 2.5 inch. I'm gonna cut 2 1.5 inch. So this one has more cutting than the rest. These are all for corner squares for our trees that we're gonna build. So for the 2 1.5, I'm gonna first cut the 3 inch and then go to 1.5. And I always cut a bigger piece first and then subcut the smaller. That's how I learned when I watched Simply Quilts from Billy Lauder years ago. So I'm gonna put the 1.5s over here. And then we need one 1.25 inch strip. And by keeping all of this out of the way, it just makes it easier. And then we'll have plenty for our finishing. So I'll just fold this over and set it aside, and then we're gonna subcut all of this. So I'm gonna go backwards since these strips are over here. I can just kind of move them out of the way, and I'm gonna cut 4 1.25 by 10.5 inch rectangles. And this is gonna be part of our sashing. Now I'm gonna first do a straightening cut to get the salvage off. And you can tell on any fabric where the salvage is because there are dots. Now I need this to be 10.5. So I'm gonna turn my ruler horizontally, and I'm gonna look here and here and cut one strip. That's gonna give me 2, and then hopefully I can get another one out of this. I can't, so we'll have to cut another strip. Or you could open this, iron it, and use this, but I prefer not to use this little piece. So I'll come back and cut that real quick. I'll just cut it off of here. I will cut one more 1.25, making sure this is nice and flat. And then we're gonna do 2 more that are 10.25. I'm gonna go ahead and just do a straightening cut over here. Set this aside in case we need it. And when I'm working with a background piece that it's really big like this, I won't use a rotating mat just because the fabric is so big. So these will be my F's, so I'll just put that on my design board and then I'll go back up. For my 1.5 inch squares, we need 30 of those. What I will do with that is these 2 strips are 1.5. I'm gonna put them on top of each other, making sure they're lined all the way up across. Turn it this way, and then I'm just gonna carefully cut from left to right. I will do a straightening cut though, so let me do the straightening cut over here real quick, and then I'll turn it. So we need 30 of these. So I'm gonna actually cut at the 6 inch mark. Okay, so I'm gonna cut 6, 4.5, 3, 1.5, and I just can go a lot faster if I do that. So that's 4, 8, 12, 16. So I'll need some more. So this, when I cut this, this will be 32, and that will be plenty. I'll have 2 extra. So 6, 4.5, 3, 1.5. So these will be my E's, and I have 2 extra, and that's fine. I just leave it on my design board. For my D's, I need 6 3.5. So we're gonna see how many we can get from here. So we'll do 3.5. And again, I'm lining up horizontally and vertically. And I do kind of push on my ruler a little bit just to keep it in place. So this is gonna give me 8, 1.5 by 3.5. So I'll have 2 extra, which is no big deal. I'll just put those also on my design board. Now we need 12 2.5-inch squares and 6 4.5-inch rectangles. So to do that, I'm gonna do the same thing where I stack my 2.5-inch pieces. And since I've starched, my fabric really stays together nicely. If it wasn't starched, my fabric wouldn't be as firm. So from here, I'm gonna do a straightening cut. You can either do it here, like I did, and twist it around. I'm gonna actually cut toward myself here. So from here, we need 6 4.5-inch rectangles. So I'm actually gonna first cut those, and I'll cut 4, and then I have 2 extra that I don't need. So I'm gonna pull these apart. So this is 6, 2.5 by 4.5, which are my B's. So I'll put them on my design board and label them. Now I need 12 2.5-inch squares. So I'm gonna cut a 5-inch, 2.5, and then one more 2.5. And that is gonna be my fabric C. And I just put them on my design board just around my pattern so I can still see what I'm doing. And I don't necessarily keep them in alphabetical order when I use my design board or my alphabetes, because when I sew, I just find what I need. And then I need 6 3.5-inch squares from my background. So this is the hardest one to cut for your background, but it's gonna be done pretty quick. And the technique we're using today is very beginner, so that's good news. We'll just be working with corner squares today, and that's a very beginner technique. And the most important thing is gonna just be to stay organized. And these are my fabric A's. And now we have cut our background, and we can move on to our tree prints. We're gonna first start with the 3 prints we're using for our tree tops, and we used gray so that it kind of looks like there's snow. And I did put my directional print on top. And what I have found best on this pattern is first we're gonna cut across the top, and we're gonna cut our skinniest piece now so that our doves will go this way. So just rotate your mat, and this will be 4.5 inches. And I love this Creative Grids ruler because it's just got the simple measurements, and we're just using simple measurements today. And you will have all of this left over for your scrap bucket. And then we'll turn this. And so I do use a rotating mat when I'm working with smaller fabrics. And from here, you just want to measure that it's at the top, cut. And here, you can always look to make sure you got through all 3 of your layer cakes. I do that sometimes, especially if you're in a hurry. Just, it's a way to check so that you don't get a smaller piece. And then here, we're gonna subcut this into 6.5, cut, and you can save this also for your scrap bucket. So these will be your fabric G's. Now we're gonna move to our fabric H's, which are our middle trees. So we have 3 greens for that. And this one also has a directional print, which is the text. So if you wanted to go this way. So we've layered all 3, and we're gonna first cut 3.5 inches skinny across the letters. And you can actually just turn your fabric if you want. And this is 3.5 inches. So I do put a lot of pressure when I'm cutting. And then you'll have a big piece for your scrap bin. From here, we're gonna subcut this into 8.5 inches. So it's always nice to have your pattern right here so you can just follow it as you're going. And these are your H's, which are your middle pieces. And when I pulled my fabrics, I put all of my directional prints on the top so I wouldn't forget. Now our bottom trees, we have 3, and we're gonna cut 3 pieces. So on here, I put my directional piece on the top. So from here, I'm gonna actually cut the 3.5, which is the skinnier side, across the top. So we're gonna cut 3.5 twice. So 3.5 plus 3.5 is 7. So I'm actually gonna cut a 7-inch piece first. Move this out of the way and then cut a 3.5-inch piece. Now from here we need one 3.5 by 4.5-inch rectangle and two 3.5-inch squares. So I'm gonna first cut the 3.5-inch squares, and again, after I cut that, just make sure you got through all the pieces. If you didn't, you'll be able to tell. So the 3.5, these will be our J's, and then move this to your scrap bucket. And then we need a 4.5-inch rectangle, and that's gonna be your I. And now we can start building our block. It's gonna make up trees that have lots of corner squares. In this demonstration, I'm gonna show you how to piece one tree, and you can use that technique on all three. So I'm gonna pull my top, middle, and bottom from my stack. So this is my top, my middle is here. And of course, if you move them out of a different order, it will be okay. And then the bottom is the holly. So my J is over here, my I is in the center, and then my J is also over here. So this entire block consists of corner square triangles. So the way that I would do this block at home is the way I'm gonna teach you. I'm gonna combine a lot of steps because it's gonna make chain piecing easier for you, and it's gonna just make the block come together a lot easier. So I have this laid out just like the pattern. I'm gonna look at step one. Step one has two fabric A's. They're gonna go right here, and we're gonna pin this in a second. So my A's are gonna go here. I'm gonna have E's down here. So I'm gonna lay it out like it would really be, and then show you how to save time at your sewing machine. Your H's, which are here, need C's on the top, because when I cut, I don't wanna have to go back and try to find my pieces. E's will also go here. And if you're doing all three trees at one time, just do 3 different design boards. Okay, your J is gonna have a C here and a C here. You're gonna have 2 E's on the bottom of both. And then your middle piece, you're only gonna have E's on the bottom. So I have everything laid out. I will set this aside because I pulled all the fabric I need for this step. When I go to the sewing machine, I can sew these two at the same time. I can add this one or this one because they need to be ironed before those can be added. But I'm gonna leave it in the top and the bottom. And I'm gonna pin, and this is a pretty big square, so I'm actually gonna pin twice. And when I go to the sewing machine, I'm gonna stitch from corner to corner here and corner to corner here. And I'm gonna leave everything on the design board so that I know exactly where everything is. Now this one, we can do the same thing. Take this one off and this one off, and you can sew these two at the same time. And I'm using Aurifil 2600 on this quilt because I think it blends the best. So I'm trying to make a maximum use of my time by doing as many steps as possible at one time. And then these, you can actually do both. You're just gonna stitch from corner to corner on all of your corner squares. We're gonna use a 1.8 stitch length, so I have my knob just slightly to the left of the two. I'm gonna use the washi tape as my guide. From here, I will just take one piece off at a time, trim a 1/4 inch away from the seam, and put it right back on my design board so it's exactly where we need it when we iron in the next step. So that's the top. I'm going to pay close attention to my pattern on which way to press my seams, and you just follow the direction of the arrow. So on the top, we'll set our seams by putting my iron on here for about 5 seconds. I'm going to press the big piece toward the black, and this bottom piece I'm going to press up toward the gray. And I'm going to just let that sit a little bit. Put it back on my design board where I got it. This is my middle, and we're going to press the top left the same way, and then we're going to do the bottom the same way. And this is going to help everything nest, and you will see it'll make sense later. And this is the left section of the bottom, so this goes toward the black, and this one will go toward the black on both of these. So that's the left, and this is the right. So both of these toward the black, and then the center piece for the bottom you press toward the green. And I just have the edge of my iron right on that seam. From here, now that we have these pressed, we can add the remaining squares. And you'll see by doing it this way, you only have to go back and forth to the machine twice instead of 4 times. So you don't have to do all 4, you can do 2 at a time. We'll do the same technique by trimming a 1/4 inch away and pressing according to the pattern. So I have everything still on my design board laid out, and I'm just gonna add the different pieces that go to the side. So on the top, we're gonna add B to the left and right. So I will start by laying out my fabrics. So here's some B's, and then just follow your pattern. D's go here, and then you don't need any here. So what I'll do here is move this out of the way now, and we'll get all of this pinned so we can go and sew all at the same time. So I'm going to change away from an open toe foot to a 1/4 inch foot with a guide. And before I go press, I do make sure all of my seams look like they are all correct and that I don't have to unsew any of them. So from here, I'm going to set this bottom seam first, just nice and slow. And even though you're finished with your block, don't rush anything. I feel like sometimes when we're doing projects, we'll be really careful at the beginning, and then at the end, we'll just rush. So just take your time. From here, I'm going to trim my block just to get just the little slivers off. This is an optional step. Sometimes when you do corner squares, you'll have little pieces that are kind of peeking out. And now we're ready to add all our blocks together and put them with sashing in between. Lay out your blocks in order according to the pattern, and then you're going to use 4 fabric Fs for your sashing, and when you add the sashing, just pin and go from left to right. That's a gift wrap on all the trimmings part 4. Join me next Monday where we put it all together, and join me every Friday for my weekly live streams. See you there.